The Psychology of Self-Mastery. Introduction. Most people believe they are one breakthrough away from changing their lives. One opportunity. One lucky moment. One perfect decision. But life rarely changes that way. A skyscraper is not built when the final glass panel is installed. It is built when workers spend months reinforcing foundations that nobody will ever see. The same principle governs human behavior. What you call success is usually the visible result of an invisible structure. And what you call failure is often the collapse of a structure that was weak long before anyone noticed the cracks. The modern world has convinced people to obsess over outcomes. More money. More recognition. More followers. More status. Yet outcomes are shadows. Identity is the object creating the shadow. The person who constantly chases results without strengthening identity is like a builder decorating walls while ignoring the foundation beneath them. Eventually, reality collects its debt. This audiobook is not about motivation. Motivation is temporary. This is about architecture. The architecture of attention. The architecture of emotional regulation. The architecture of discipline. The architecture of self-mastery. Because the strongest minds are not born. They are constructed. Brick by brick. Thought by thought. Decision by decision. And like the roots of a tree growing beneath the soil long before the first branch appears, the most important changes happen long before the world notices them. Welcome to the Psychology of Self-Mastery. Let us begin. The architecture of identity. The hard truth. Your life is not controlled by your goals. It is controlled by your identity. Most people spend years trying to change their circumstances while protecting the very identity that created those circumstances. They want confidence without becoming confident. They want discipline without becoming disciplined. They want success without becoming the kind of person who naturally produces success. This creates an internal conflict. A person may desire a different future, but their identity keeps pulling them back toward familiar behavior. The mind values consistency more than improvement. It would rather remain predictable than become powerful. And that is why so many people remain trapped in cycles they claim they want to escape. Their actions are serving their identity more faithfully than their ambitions. The psychological mechanism. Every human being operates through invisible scripts. These scripts are silent assumptions about who they are. Some people carry scripts like, I am always behind. I am not naturally disciplined. I never finish what I start. I am unlucky. The dangerous part is that these scripts rarely appear as conscious thoughts. They operate beneath awareness. Like roots beneath soil. Because identity functions as a psychological filter. The mind constantly searches for evidence that confirms its existing beliefs. If a person believes they are unreliable, they notice every mistake and ignore every success. If a person believes they are weak, they remember failures and dismiss victories. The brain is not searching for truth. It is searching for consistency. This is why transformation feels uncomfortable. Growth requires challenging the invisible script. And the mind interprets that challenge as danger. Not because growth is dangerous. But because change threatens familiarity. The old identity may be limiting. Yet it feels safe. The new identity may be empowering. Yet it feels uncertain. Most people retreat at this point. The self-mastered individual continues. Because they understand a simple principle. Identity is not discovered. Identity is constructed. The practical protocol. The identity log. For the next 30 days, stop measuring outcomes. Measure evidence. At the end of every day, write down 3 pieces of behavioral evidence that support the identity you want to build. If your desired identity is disciplined, write evidence of discipline. If your desired identity is focused, Write evidence of focus. If your desired identity is resilient, write evidence of resilience. Keep the entries simple. I completed my work before checking social media. I finished a difficult task. I remained calm during conflict. The objective is not perfection. The objective is accumulation. Brick by brick. Because identity changes when evidence accumulates, not when motivation appears. Each action becomes a vote. Each decision becomes reinforcement. Each day becomes another layer in the foundation. Eventually the mind accepts what behavior repeatedly proves. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. I do not wait for identity to appear. I build it. My actions are evidence. My behavior is my foundation. And every disciplined choice strengthens who I become. Chapter 2. Why emotions mislead performance. The hard truth. Your emotions are not trying to help you succeed. They are trying to help you survive. Most people assume that because they feel something strongly, they should act on it immediately. They mistake intensity for accuracy. A surge of anger becomes a decision. A wave of fear becomes avoidance. A moment of doubt becomes surrender. But emotions were never designed to predict your future. They were designed to alert you to your environment. The problem begins when you promote an alert system into a leadership position. Many lives are quietly shaped by emotions that were only meant to deliver information. The strongest individuals understand something most people never learn. An emotion is a signal, not a command. And the moment you stop obeying every emotional impulse, you begin reclaiming authority over your life. The psychological mechanism. The human brain evolved for protection long before it evolved for performance. Thousands of years ago, reacting quickly often meant survival. A sudden sound in the darkness. Movement in nearby bushes. An unfamiliar face approaching. Speed was valuable. Reflection was secondary. That ancient wiring still exists. The modern problem is that most threats are no longer physical. Yet the brain often responds as if they are. A difficult conversation can trigger the same stress response as physical danger. A public mistake can feel like a threat to survival. A rejection email can activate emotional alarms that far exceed the reality of the situation. This is where invisible scripts gain power. The mind receives a fact, then immediately creates a story. The fact might be: the presentation received criticism. The story becomes: I am incompetent. The fact might be: they did not respond. The story becomes: they do not respect me. The fact lasts seconds. The story can last years. Many people are not suffering from events. They are suffering from interpretations. They are carrying stories that have acquired more emotional weight than the facts that created them. This is why emotional regulation is not weakness. It is strategic calibration. A calm mind creates distance between stimulus and response. Within that distance lies judgment. Within judgment lies leverage. And within leverage lies power. The practical protocol. The 24-hour reset protocol. Whenever a highly emotional event occurs, apply a simple rule. Do not make major decisions for 24 hours. No dramatic messages. No impulsive resignations. No emotional confrontations. No irreversible choices. Instead, follow 4 steps. Step 1. Write down the fact. Only the objective reality. Nothing else. Step 2. Write down the story your mind immediately created. Notice how quickly interpretation appears. Step 3. Separate the two. Ask yourself: what do I know with certainty? What am I merely assuming? Step 4. Wait 24 hours before acting. Allow emotional intensity to decrease. Allow perspective to return. Allow reasoning to regain cognitive access. Most emotional mistakes are not caused by poor intelligence. They are caused by acting before emotional turbulence settles. The individual who can pause possesses a strategic advantage. Because while others react, they observe. While others escalate, they calibrate. While others surrender authority to emotion, they maintain command. The pause becomes a weapon. Not against others. Against impulsive versions of themselves. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. My emotions provide information. They do not provide direction. I observe before I react. I think before I decide. I lead my emotions. They do not lead me. Pause. Breathe. And remember. The calm observer often sees opportunities that emotional minds cannot detect. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is power under control. Chapter 3. The Fortress of Attention. The hard truth. The greatest threat to your future is not failure. It is fragmentation. Most people do not lose because they lack talent. They lose because their attention has been divided into so many directions that no meaningful force remains behind any single effort. A river can carve through stone because its energy moves in one direction. A flood spreads everywhere and leaves little behind. The same principle applies to the human mind. Every notification. Every distraction. Every unnecessary argument. Every hour spent consuming what was never intended to improve your trajectory. Each one extracts a small tax from your attention. And attention is not unlimited. It is a finite resource. A form of cognitive currency. The question is not whether you are spending it. The question is whether you are spending it deliberately. Because whatever consistently receives your attention eventually receives your life. The psychological mechanism. The brain evolved to notice novelty. New information. Unexpected movement. Potential opportunities. Potential threats. This tendency once helped humans survive. Today it often works against them. Modern environments are engineered to compete for cognitive access. Every platform. Every advertisement. Every alert. Every headline. They are not competing for your money first. They are competing for your attention. Because attention is leverage. Whoever controls your attention influences your behavior. And whoever influences your behavior influences your future. This creates an invisible battle. A battle most people do not even realize they are fighting. Many individuals wake up with intentions. But before their own priorities take shape, they allow external noise to occupy mental space. By midday, their focus has already been fragmented. By evening, they feel exhausted despite accomplishing very little. The problem is rarely effort. The problem is allocation. Imagine trying to build a house while constantly moving construction crews from one project to another. No foundation would ever become strong. No structure would ever rise. The same thing happens inside the mind. Deep work requires uninterrupted attention. Mastery requires sustained concentration. Yet most people train distraction more consistently than focus. And the brain becomes stronger at whatever it repeatedly practices. Focus is not a gift. Focus is a muscle. And every distraction is either strengthening it or weakening it. The practical protocol. The 90-minute focus block. For the next 30 days, create one protected 90-minute block each day. Treat this block as a fortress. A period where your attention belongs exclusively to your highest leverage activity. Before beginning, remove unnecessary distractions. Silence notifications. Close unrelated tabs. Place the phone out of reach. Create an environment that supports concentration rather than sabotages it. Then select one objective. Only one. Not 5 priorities. Not multiple goals. One meaningful task. For 90 minutes, direct your full attention toward that task. When distractions arise, do not fight them emotionally. Simply notice them. Then return. Again and again. The objective is not perfect focus. The objective is repeated redirection. Every return strengthens the muscle. Every recovery reinforces discipline. Every uninterrupted session adds another brick to the fortress. At the end of the session, record what was accomplished. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. You stop relying on motivation. You stop waiting to feel ready. You learn to generate progress through structure. And structure outperforms motivation every time. Because motivation is temporary. Systems are sustainable. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. My attention is valuable. I do not give it away carelessly. I direct it with intention. I protect it with discipline. My focus shapes my future. And what I consistently focus on, I become. Pause for a moment. Consider where your attention has been flowing. Because attention is like water. Where it flows repeatedly, growth follows. Guard it carefully. A fortress is not built by accident. And neither is a focused mind. Chapter 4. Strategic Silence and Observation. The hard truth. The person who speaks the most often learns the least. Most people believe power comes from being heard. They believe influence comes from having the final word. They believe strength is demonstrated through constant expression. But human behavior reveals a different reality. The individual who constantly explains, defends, and reacts is often giving away valuable information. Meanwhile, the calm observer is collecting it. Silence is frequently misunderstood. Many view it as weakness. Others interpret it as uncertainty. Yet strategic silence is neither weakness nor uncertainty. It is restraint. And restraint is one of the highest forms of self-control. The strongest minds understand that not every thought deserves expression. Not every challenge deserves a response. Not every invitation deserves acceptance. Sometimes the greatest display of power is the ability to remain still while others rush to react. Because every unnecessary reaction leaks energy. And energy, once spent, cannot be recovered. The psychological mechanism. Human beings reveal themselves constantly. Not only through words. But through patterns. Through habits. Through timing. Through behavior under pressure. Words are performances. Behavior leaks the truth. This is why observation creates leverage. When people become emotional, they often reveal priorities they normally hide. When they become impatient, they reveal expectations. When they encounter obstacles, they reveal character. Most individuals miss these signals because they are too busy preparing responses. Instead of listening, they are rehearsing. Instead of observing, they are reacting. Instead of gathering information, they are broadcasting information. This creates a significant disadvantage. Because understanding usually belongs to the observer. Imagine two people entering a room. One spends the entire time talking about themselves. The other spends the entire time observing. At the end of the interaction, only one person possesses useful information. The observer. Strategic observation is not manipulation. It is awareness. It is the discipline of seeing reality before attempting to influence it. The person who understands the environment gains cognitive leverage. The person who reacts impulsively becomes controlled by it. And this principle applies internally as well. Observe your own thoughts. Observe your emotional triggers. Observe recurring patterns. You cannot master what you refuse to notice. Self-mastery begins with self-observation. The practical protocol. The strategic silence exercise. For the next 7 days, practice deliberate silence during conversations. Not complete silence. Strategic silence. When someone finishes speaking, wait 3 seconds before responding. Listen fully. Observe tone. Observe body language. Observe emotional shifts. Notice what people repeatedly emphasize. Notice what they avoid discussing. Notice where behavior contradicts words. At the same time, apply the same exercise internally. Whenever a strong emotion appears, resist the urge to immediately explain it away. Instead ask, "What am I feeling? What triggered it? What pattern have I seen before?" Become a student of your own mind. The objective is not judgment. The objective is awareness. Because awareness creates options. And options create freedom. Most people remain trapped because they react automatically. The observer interrupts the automatic pattern. And in that interruption, a new trajectory becomes possible. Remember, you cannot control every situation. But you can control how quickly you surrender your attention, energy, and emotional stability. Silence helps you maintain that control. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. I observe before I react. I listen before I speak. I seek understanding before judgment. My awareness is a source of strength. My silence is intentional. And my restraint creates leverage. Pause. Consider how much energy has been lost throughout your life through unnecessary reactions. Arguments that changed nothing. Defenses that convinced no one. Explanations given to people who had already decided what to believe. Now imagine redirecting that energy. Imagine investing it into observation. Into growth. Into clarity. The calm observer rarely appears powerful in the moment. But over time, they gain something far more valuable than attention. They gain understanding. And understanding is one of the strongest forms of power available to the human mind. Chapter 5. The hidden cost of reaction. The hard truth. Most people believe their biggest mistakes come from making the wrong decisions. The truth is often more uncomfortable. Many of their biggest mistakes come from making decisions too quickly. Reaction feels productive. It creates the illusion of control. It convinces the mind that immediate action is superior to deliberate thought. But speed and wisdom are not the same thing. A person can respond instantly and still move in the wrong direction. In fact, some of life's most expensive consequences begin with a moment of emotional urgency. An angry message. A careless commitment. An impulsive purchase. A rushed judgment. A decision made to escape discomfort rather than create progress. The cost is rarely visible at first. Like a small crack in a foundation, it appears insignificant. But over time, the consequences compound. The hidden cost of reaction is not simply the mistake itself. The hidden cost is the trajectory it creates. Because every impulsive decision teaches the mind a dangerous lesson. That emotion should lead and reason should follow. And once that pattern becomes familiar, it begins appearing everywhere. The psychological mechanism. The brain prefers immediate relief over long-term benefit. This tendency is deeply rooted in human psychology. When discomfort appears, the mind naturally seeks escape. Not resolution. Escape. The difference matters. Resolution requires patience. Escape requires reaction. Consider what happens during moments of frustration. The emotional brain begins searching for ways to reduce tension. Not necessarily the best solution. Simply the fastest one. This is why people interrupt long-term goals for short-term comfort. This is why they abandon plans during temporary setbacks. This is why they trade meaningful progress for immediate gratification. The mind confuses relief with improvement. But relief and improvement are not the same thing. Eating unhealthy food may provide relief. Avoiding a difficult conversation may provide relief. Scrolling endlessly may provide relief. Yet none of these actions necessarily improve the situation. This is where invisible scripts become dangerous. The script often sounds like, "I need to do something right now." Yet urgency is frequently emotional rather than practical. The calm observer recognizes this distinction. They understand that not every feeling requires action. Some feelings require observation. Some require patience. And some simply require time. Because clarity often arrives after emotion leaves. The strongest individuals are not those who never experience emotional pressure. They are those who refuse to let pressure make decisions on their behalf. The practical protocol. The response gap protocol. For the next 30 days, create a deliberate gap between stimulus and response. Whenever something triggers a strong emotional reaction, follow 3 steps. Step 1. Pause. Not for a few seconds. For long enough to regain awareness. Take a breath. Allow the nervous system to settle. Step 2. Ask a simple question. What outcome do I actually want? Not what emotion wants. What outcome you want? This question shifts attention from reaction to strategy. Step 3. Choose the response that serves your future self rather than your current emotion. Sometimes that response will be action. Sometimes it will be silence. Sometimes it will be waiting. Sometimes it will be walking away. The objective is not passivity. The objective is intentionality. Over time, this practice creates a powerful transformation. You stop being controlled by circumstances. You stop being controlled by other people's behavior. You stop being controlled by temporary emotional states. Instead, you begin operating from principles. And principles remain stable even when emotions fluctuate. This is where self-respect grows. Because self-respect is not built by winning every situation. It is built by maintaining alignment between your values and your actions. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. I do not react automatically. I choose deliberately. I value clarity over urgency. I value strategy over impulse. My future is shaped by intentional decisions. And I refuse to surrender that future to temporary emotions. Pause. Remember this. Anyone can react. Reaction requires no training. No discipline. No awareness. But responding with intention is different. It requires emotional regulation. It requires patience. It requires strength. A tree does not become strong during calm weather. Its roots deepen during storms. In the same way, self-mastery is not proven when life is easy. It is revealed when pressure arrives. And in those moments, the quality of your response becomes the architecture of your future. Chapter 6. The Power of Behavioral Evidence. The Hard Truth. Intentions mean very little without behavioral evidence. Most people judge themselves by what they meant to do. But reality measures what they repeatedly do. This creates one of the greatest psychological distortions in modern life. A person promises discipline, yet repeatedly chooses distraction. They speak about growth, yet protect familiar habits. They claim to value health, yet consistently neglect the behaviors that produce it. Over time, this contradiction weakens self-trust. Because the mind is always observing behavior. Not words. Not plans. Not ambitions. Behavior. And when actions repeatedly fail to align with self-image, internal credibility begins to collapse. This is why many individuals secretly doubt themselves. Not because they lack potential, but because they have trained themselves not to trust their own commitments. Every broken promise becomes another crack in the internal structure. Meanwhile, every completed action reinforces identity. The mind listens to behavior more carefully than it listens to language. Because behavior is evidence. And evidence shapes belief. The psychological mechanism. Human beings naturally seek coherence between identity and action. When behavior repeatedly contradicts self-image, psychological tension emerges. This tension is uncomfortable. And the mind usually resolves it in one of two ways. Either behavior improves, or identity lowers itself to match behavior. This is why repeated inaction becomes dangerous. Not because of the missed opportunity alone, but because of the identity it gradually constructs. A person who repeatedly avoids difficult tasks begins unconsciously adopting the identity of someone who avoids discomfort. A person who consistently quits early begins reinforcing the invisible script. I do not finish. And once identity absorbs that pattern, future behavior becomes even more predictable. The cycle strengthens itself. This is why self-mastery is rarely built through dramatic transformation. It is built through repeated behavioral confirmation. Small disciplined actions. Repeated consistently. Like laying bricks every day. One brick appears insignificant. But enough bricks create structure. The roots of confidence develop the same way. Most people wait to feel confident before acting. But confidence is usually the result of accumulated evidence. The individual who keeps promises to themselves develops psychological stability. Because their mind learns something important. This person can be trusted. That trust becomes internal strength. And internal strength changes behavior far more effectively than temporary motivation ever could. The practical protocol. The one more rule. For the next 30 days, practice the one more rule. Whenever you feel the urge to stop, do one more. One more page. One more repetition. One more minute of focus. One more difficult conversation. One more attempt. The objective is not exhaustion. The objective is identity reinforcement. Because the moment when you want to stop is psychologically significant. That moment is where identity is negotiated. Most people obey the first signal of discomfort. The self-mastered individual trains themselves to remain present slightly longer. That small extension changes something internally. It interrupts the invisible script that says, I always quit when things become uncomfortable. Over time, the brain begins collecting new evidence. Evidence of resilience. Evidence of discipline. Evidence of follow-through. This is where behavioral leverage begins compounding. Not through intensity. Through consistency. The one more rule teaches the nervous system an important lesson. Discomfort is survivable. And once the mind stops interpreting discomfort as danger, performance expands naturally. Remember. A weak identity avoids pressure. A strong identity grows through calibrated pressure. Just as muscle develops through resistance, psychological strength develops through repeated exposure to manageable difficulty. Brick by brick. Decision by decision. Evidence by evidence. The identity anchor. Repeat slowly. My behavior defines my standards. I build trust with myself through action. I finish what I begin. I continue when discomfort appears. Every disciplined choice strengthens my identity. And every action becomes evidence of who I am becoming. Pause. Consider how many times you have underestimated the power of small actions. A single brick does not resemble a building. A single root does not resemble a forest. Yet structures are never built all at once. Neither is identity. The strongest individuals are not always the most talented. Often, they are simply the ones who continued adding evidence long after others stopped. And eventually, the accumulated weight of disciplined behavior becomes impossible to ignore. Before the conclusion, take a moment to recognize what has been revealed throughout this journey. You have seen that self-mastery is not a single skill. It is an integrated structure. A system of identity, attention, emotional regulation, observation, intentional response, and disciplined behavior. Each chapter has pointed toward the same truth from a different angle. The quality of your life is rarely determined by what happens around you. It is determined by the architecture you build within you. Conclusion. The invisible season. The world celebrates visible success. The promotion. The achievement. The transformation. The recognition. The result. But what the world sees is only the final chapter of a much longer story. The visible season receives attention. The invisible season creates it. A tree does not rise from the ground the moment a seed is planted. For a long period, nothing appears to happen. No branches. No leaves. No visible growth. Yet beneath the surface, roots are expanding. The foundation is being prepared. The structure is forming in silence. Human growth follows the same pattern. Most of the changes that matter happen long before anyone notices them. The discipline nobody applauds. The focus nobody sees. The restraint nobody understands. The early mornings. The difficult choices. The promises kept when breaking them would have been easier. These moments rarely receive recognition. Yet they are the moments that shape identity. And identity shapes destiny. The modern world encourages people to chase visible outcomes. To seek immediate evidence. To demand instant results. But nature operates differently. The strongest structures require time. The deepest roots develop in darkness. The most resilient minds are often forged during seasons that appear unproductive from the outside. This is why patience is not passive. Patience is strategic. The individual who understands this principle no longer becomes discouraged by temporary invisibility. They understand that foundations are supposed to be hidden. No one admires a foundation. Yet every great structure depends upon one. The same is true for character. The same is true for discipline. The same is true for self-mastery. When nobody notices your effort, continue. When progress appears slow, continue. When results remain invisible, continue. Because invisible does not mean ineffective. The roots are still growing. The structure is still strengthening. The architecture is still forming. And one day, what was once hidden beneath the surface will become impossible to ignore. Remember what you have learned. Identity creates outcomes. Emotions provide information, not direction. Attention is your most valuable currency. Observation creates leverage. Intentional responses outperform impulsive reactions. Behavior is the evidence that shapes belief. And every disciplined action becomes another brick in the structure of who you are becoming. The goal was never perfection. The goal was construction. Slow. Deliberate. Intentional construction. Brick by brick. Day by day. Choice by choice. Because self-mastery is not an event. It is a process. Not a destination. But a way of operating. A way of thinking. A way of building. And while the world continues chasing quick results, you now understand a deeper truth. The most important victories are won long before they become visible. The strongest roots grow where nobody can see them. The most powerful transformations begin in silence. Guard that silent season carefully. Protect it from distraction. Protect it from comparison. Protect it from doubt. Because your future is being built there. Not in the spotlight. Not in the applause. But in the unseen moments where identity is strengthened and character is forged. The world celebrates visible success. But every visible victory was first constructed in an invisible season. And that invisible season begins today. My attention builds my life. My behavior builds my identity. My discipline builds my future. And brick by brick, I become unshakable. The architecture is already under construction.